Scott here, and I'm back with another VR title. This one's from Drifter, and it's Lies Beneath on the Oculus Rift. For a whole lot more videos like this one, check out our channel, give us a like, and subscribe. So I jumped back into the world of VR, strapping that Oculus Rift S to my face, and getting scared as usual. The horror games are definitely my forte, and when I saw this one on the trailers quite a while back, it piqued my curiosity. This is a Japanese-inspired, very comic book-looking horror survival game that brings you through a bunch of different locations, and the action follows closely behind. Getting into the action, it's a lot of melee combat mixed with some gunplay at times. You find a bunch of ammo throughout the map, but it is kind of scattered, and it does want you to be careful with your shots. You have a couple different slots on you to carry things. You have one for a shotgun on your back, you have a left and right kind of holster, which you can attach a hatchet to if you like, and then you can carry weapons in your left and right hand. Now, that could be an axe, it could be a wooden spike, it could be a proper hatchet, or it could just be a bear trap that you find along the way that you pick up and throw on the ground to cause damage to zombies. That's your primary enemy, is a lot of zombies and these undead types of enemies that just kind of rush you or throw things at you from a distance. Very grotesque and very satisfying to kill. A lot of the engagements are pretty difficult when the enemies start really piling on you. There's a lot of different entryways, so sometimes they'll come from the front and the back, and it's up to you to decipher the audio cues to kind of respond to threats in the right manner. Now, it's not a rail shooter, very specifically not. Although you move really slowly, you are in complete control of your feet the entire time, and the maps are generally built in such a way that you can move quite a bit throughout your planned path. Oftentimes, you'll see your path ahead of you from another location, and you kind of have to figure out how to open up a gate or which way to go to kind of get around the obstacle or the wooden barrier in your way. A lot of the times that will reveal a kind of fight sequence where you get overwhelmed with another wave of enemies. It's not terribly difficult combat, although being slower than the enemy means I kind of just have to expend all my ammo on them. I can't afford to dodge, really. And that makes the gameplay kind of work out in a similar fashion almost every time. You throw your melee weapons, maybe saving one, and then fall back to the revolvers until you're out of ammo, at which point the reload is pretty simple. You just flick the gun out, it exposes all the cylinders and the bullets, then you flick it back in and that just gives you a fresh cylinder. So in that way, they simplified the action to kind of keep the ball rolling. The only other armament you get is not really an armament at all. You have a lighter on your chest. It's like an old Zippo style lighter that you can hold up and illuminate the area around you, but in combat it serves a certain purpose. It actually gives you a reticle on screen, so you don't have to actually try and aim down the sights. It can be very useful in the thick of battle, but at the same time it takes your left hand out of the fight. But they also use that lighter in an interesting way for the horror aspects of the game. A lot of the time it puts you in this really uncomfortable position of warping you out of whatever area you were just in and then putting you into something that's very dark, and you're tempted to go for that lighter, and when you do, it takes advantage of you. This game is not shy to take the cheap shot. It will try and jump scare you. And that's something that I appreciate, and it was a little bit cliche, but in this game and this environment with the cartoony comic book kind of feel, it still got me, even though I was somewhat expecting it. It's really cool the way this artwork and the atmosphere they build really seeps into your psyche, and after a while, not too long, you kind of forget that you're in the middle of a VR game, and everything kind of gets scary, and it starts to really have an effect on you. And that's amazing for a horror game. Now, when I saw this game, I didn't really think there was going to be as much combat as there was, and it was really kind of pleasantly surprising that there would be this much challenge to the game. But I did kind of miss the feeling of total horror. Like, I was too relieved too often with a combat section, and that got me through the next area. I understand that's definitely there for pacing, but I would have liked to see a little bit more of the horror, uncomfortable elements worked in alongside of it. It too often felt like a section of horror followed by a section of gunplay, and then another section of horror, similar to the way Fear kind of plays at you. I think my initial take of it in watching the trailer was it was going to be more of a psychological thing, putting you through a lot of different stresses, and that adds and builds until eventually, you know, you just have to face your fears and enter the dark room or whatever it is. They definitely did certain aspects of that, but for that to just dissolve away immediately after the scare into kind of like a last stand, last cabin defense kind of thing, it just kind of cheapened the horror a bit. I don't want to use that terminology because it's a little harsh, but it just kind of took away that edge where I thought the game was going. That being said, it is really fun in those last stand scenarios to expend everything you've got. It really does put you to the wall sometimes, where all the boarded windows are breaking in, you're throwing bear traps to kind of just get some free damage off on these enemies, and then you just have to switch to your shotgun and just clear them in a frantic fury. It's really fun the way they built the pacing in this game. And then other times you'll be walking through the woods and there's a lot of fog and you don't really see the enemies, but they're just kind of slowly throwing things at you and doing things that are a lot less in your face. So there's definitely different enemy types, and they definitely get at you in different ways. It gives you a lot to contend a bit with when you're walking through a new area and you're not really sure what's coming at you next. Now, the game saves by the use of fires or torches that you come across on the way. A little lantern, so to speak, that you light with your lighter, and that gives you a checkpoint. Sometimes you can find collectibles on the way between these checkpoints, and that'll give you just a special item or perhaps some more ammo at the next bonfire that you come across. It's a return to calm that you come to get used to. The audio in this game is definitely really well done. It has that binaural, of course, being a virtual reality game, then the horror aspects of it, it really needs to sell that scare. A lot of the times it is a jump scare type effect, but sometimes it's more subtle, where I'll hear a whispering next to my face, and that's a jump scare as well. But the visuals to go along with the audio are also really well done. I want to stress that this game looks beautiful. I have an Oculus Rift S. I understand this game came out for the Oculus Quest, and it was very well received on that as well. So the graphics have this comic book effect to them. A lot of the time when you throw an item into the wood, it'll pop up with like a thwack or a bam or something to that effect to show the action. It's just a charming little nod, man. You quickly forget that you're in a comic book world, but when you look at some of the enemies and some of the scary things that come at you, it really allows you to think in this more imaginative way. It didn't kind of ruin its horror by trying to appear real. It really skips over that and just gives you that really creepy manga effect that something like Junji Ito is super famous for. And that's what I was looking for in this game, and I was pretty pleasantly surprised. That was a little bit of my opinion on The Game Lies Beneath. This is quite spectacular. I had a great time with it, and the horror versus survival aspects of it, I hope I've done a little bit to explain how intricate it works. It does a good job of marrying both these types of games together in a way that is quite memorable, and I really hope to see a sequel in the future. Games in VR have kind of hit another standard, and this is definitely one that fits that groove as well. Now, as for a score, I want to give this one a 7.5. An awesome game from a great studio, a healthy mix of horror and monster slaying action in beautiful environments.